Well, hello there, Riverland. Long Prairie Gray Eagle. My first outside beginning of the 2021 school year, spring semester, February 25th. Three of you that were with me last fall know that I like to do these outside once in a while. Give you some different backgrounds. I got a beautiful property for it, and except you're gonna hear some annoying birds. So let me apologize for that. I had the idea that it was going to get up to 40 degrees today. We're not even anywhere near that right now. On 2:30 in the afternoon or so, it's 32 degrees on my thermometer over there, and well, not going to bother me. English majors are naturally resistant to extremes of heat and cold. Not many people know that, and we have a lot of strategies for staying healthy and strong. At night, most of us curl anthologies, heavy books. That's one of the reasons why we're just such powerful, intimidating people. Good to see you. Good to be seen, like I keep saying. Let's at least do the intro out here, and then I'll get back in my cozy office. We lost a poet over the weekend, and I have an old habit of eulogizing, offering, speaking well of dead poets. It goes back many years. I got to do it. Panegyric is ritualistic behavior towards the dead. That's the fancy word for it from the medieval period. And I've been doing this a long time. We lost Lawrence Ferlinghetti, one of the last of the beat poets. Beat as in beatnik. Those guys, those men and mostly men, but women too, who made their mark on the American literature scene in the 1950s. We're talking a little history. We're talking William Burroughs, Jack Kerouac. Allen Ginsberg was their king. And he died at 101 in San Francisco, the bicycle poet of San Francisco, as they called him. He loved it there. I'm not going to read his poetry to you. I don't really care for his verse that much. But that doesn't mean he's not a notable figure in American literature and worth talking about. To get me going today, I'm going to read a poet that I've never read, or strike that. I did picked up this book about 3 years ago. And I remember there was a student in there named Maddie that loved the poem that I read so much that she borrowed the book. Brett gave me the book back too. That's a miracle. Can't tell you how many books I've loaned out to students that never come back. And that's fine. We'll start with a poem by Nikolai Madzirov, who is from Macedonia. I read a lot of American poetry, but I also read a lot of contemporary European poets too, especially from Eastern Europe. Poland, Estonia, etc. And we'll start with him. I also, this week I've decided is the week for my spring safety talk. Okay, I got to give it. And I will not pound you with the numerous examples of students who have gotten in trouble on those first warm days of the spring. You get just one story. And I hope accidents can happen any time of the year to young people. I've been doing this long enough. It can happen in the winter, fall, summer. But there's something about those first warm days of spring, and y'all got to watch it. And I don't know why I said y'all. Also today I want to talk about a tension that I've really been feeling all my life as something comfortable, but now a little less comfortable. And that is the tension or the paradox, the back and forthness between the analog world and the digital world. And we've probably already talked about the idea that the pandemic, it's the dumbest, most obvious thing I could say. The pandemic has pushed all of us towards the digital rather dramatically. And that is, I say in the context of a pandemic, and I also say it as for the second spring in a row, try to lead young people through research projects that are totally virtual, and that's just what we're kind of stuck with. Shh, could you be quiet? I guess not. So I'd like to talk about that a little bit. I'd also like to talk about the idea of attribution, which is really all you're doing when you're writing a research paper and you're citing sources. And it's probably time to start talking about the quality of sources, types of sources. And I need you guys to step up there and really listen to me here. I'm not having it with askabout.com if you've ever been there. It's just garbage. It's junk. Basic websites can get you going, but you got to be careful. The internet is just like the Wild West, and I'll prove that either today or with your third lesson of the week. So let me read this poem and we'll go inside where it's a little bit warmer. Nikolai Madzirov, again from Macedonia, fast as the century. If I were wind, I would have peeled the bark off the trees and the facades off the buildings in the outskirts. If I were gold, I would have been hidden in cellars, into crumbly earth and among broken toys. I would have been forgotten by the fathers, and their sons would remember me forever. If I were a dog, I wouldn't have been afraid of refugees. If I were a moon, I wouldn't have been afraid of executions. If I were a wall clock, I would have covered the cracks on the wall. Fast as the century, we survived the weak earthquakes, watching towards the sky, yet not towards the ground. We open the windows to let in the air of the places we've never been. Wars don't exist, since someone wounds our heart every day. Fast as the century, faster than the word. If I were dead, everyone would have believed me when I kept silent. I'll read that to my face-to-face students tomorrow. Well, go inside. Well, let's get our safety talk on here. Our spring safety talk, as I've been calling it for a long, long time. And it's basically this. Yes, young people get in all kinds of trouble. They find their way to it year after year in all kinds of situations. And yeah, things can happen in any moment, any season. But, trust me on this one. Sometimes you got to trust English majors. In August, I land in the middle of my 4th decade teaching. And I've seen thousands and thousands of students pass by, and they don't all make it. So what I'm really worried, and I'm doing this preemptively, I'm doing this earlier than I usually do. It's cold out there. I just told you, 32 degrees. Well, in a couple of weeks, I've looked at the extended forecast. We're really quickly, we're going to get up in the 40s and the 50s and the 60s. And I think it's that first spring day where you just got to watch it. Because that's the day that you want to jump in your car, throw open your window, and drive as fast as you possibly can until you crash. I'll burden you with only one story. I told a bunch of them yesterday. And that was up in Brainerd, and there were names that were familiar to them, because that's a small town where a lot of people know everybody. But I'll go Intro to the Humanities 2 years ago. I'm moving through families at Central Lakes College. Sometimes I also teach entire friend groups, which is kind of fun, especially when the friend group is cute. And I had a bunch of kids who just kind of took all my classes at the same time within the breath of a couple, 3 semesters. And how I love them. They're all at university now. And 2 springs ago, a beautiful day came along, and I was walking down the hallway of my college, when I could walk down the hallway, and I thought, today's the day. This is the day. I'm doing the spring safety talk, and I talked to my 9 o'clock, same schedule as I have right now. Talk to my 9 o'clock crew, my 10 o'clock honors lit class, my other Comp 2 at 11 o'clock, catch my breath, and Intro to the Humanities, as always, is enacted at 1. It's been like this for years. And I read everybody the Riot Act. And at about 12:30 that day, I was sitting in my dedicated classroom, E339. I get to have all my classes in there. Some days I call it J339. How's that for trying to take possession of state property? And I'm sitting there with a couple of students. We're hanging out. We're listening to music, enjoying each other's company. And I was eating my chicken tacos. I always eat 2 on my lunch hour. And a sweet woman named Mary Schaffbauer came flying into the room. Kind of before class, actually. I got to tell the story true. And she says, I hear you're giving your spring safety talk today. And I said, yep, all classes are going to get it, including yours at 1 o'clock. And she said, you didn't get to us in time. I'm like, what do you mean? Well, classic scenario. Beautiful day, sun shining, spring wind blowing, birds singing like you just heard here. And that was the day that Abby Newman decided to jump up on the hood of the car of her then boyfriend, Brady Kowalczyk. And let's goof around a little bit. Let's just have fun in the east parking lot at Central Lakes College. Well, that lasted for like 30 seconds, and they were tooling around, and then Brady taps on the brakes, of course, and she goes flying off. Don't worry, she's okay. But bam, she got 2 teeth knocked out. And that was tough. Blood on the pavement, insurance fraud enacted, etc. And I just love those kids so much. I'm like, oh, could I, I'm not saying that the safety talk could have completely defended them from that, but that's just the classic scenario that I'm trying to talk about. We lose kids at Minnesota colleges and universities every year. They just vanish. It happened at St. John's in 2003. We lost a kid named Josh Gamond. 1 minute he was walking along and then he wasn't. We lost a kid last year at University of Minnesota Duluth, and he was a friend of the son of a dear friend of mine who's like a brother to me. My attorney friend Steve Snelling, also an English major. 1 minute the kid was walking along, and the next minute he's in the lake. People just disappear, and the 18 to 25 demographic is the demographic that's really got to watch out. Yes, I'm impulsive too, but you can't touch the impulsivity of a young person. And I say that as a teacher. I say that as a father, as a parent. And young people often have a pretty faulty sense of cause-effect, right? Like if I do X, maybe Y will happen, or Z, or goodness knows what. Look after yourselves, especially in the pandemic. It's never been more important to give the spring safety talk. Look after yourselves. Look after each other. I know a lot of you are in high school, but high school kids start going to parties. Maybe not. Maybe put that beer down. Don't even pick it up to begin with. Know your surroundings. Be careful. Be well. Be safe. If you're not safe and well, nothing else matters. And I'll end this segment because you're probably going, well, what is he talking about? I'm talking about how much I love you guys and how I want you to be all right. I told my live Zoom squares yesterday, 4 classes. I said, put up your hand if you want to go to a 4-year college or university. And all the hands were fluttering in the air, most of them. And then I had to tell them something hard. I said, okay, watch out, watch for this, wait for it. If you go, the larger a school you go to, the more often you're going to see this. And I told my students, I wasn't trying to be the dark prophet of doom. I was just being an experienced teacher who told them that all the schools that we go to, Winona, that we send students to, Winona, University of Minnesota Duluth, Morris, Bemidji, Mankato, public and private schools, it's a guarantee that periodically, episodically, as a student at one of those bigger schools, you're going to approach a building and you're going to see a blaze pink sign on the door taped to the glass. And it's going to say urgent security alert or something like that. I've seen this everywhere I've ever taught. And there'll be a little narrative and it'll say, okay, at such and such a time in such and such a parking lot, there was a sexual assault enacted, and here's what the suspect looks like. 6 feet tall, whatever. And I always have this, often, I've learned to fight back against it, but the petty thought I had when I was a less experienced teacher, younger, was, God in heaven, please let that not be one of my students. Well, why is that thought petty and small? It's because if it's not my student, it's going to be some other teacher's. Some other professor is going to have to sit down, maybe, with a young woman and help her survive sexual assault or a rape. And I've done that all my days, year after year after year. Not every year, but many, many, many times. And those moments are hard. So just watch it. Watch it. Be careful. Be safe. Much lighter, kind of a heavy topic. Much lighter is the rest of this day, our time together, in the next 20 minutes or so that we have. I'd like to talk briefly about the tension between, in my life, I'll just speak personally, between the analog and the digital. In real life, I'm pretty comfortable with it. I go back and forth. The 61, I'm half wired. I'm proving that with this super expensive camera. And I go back and forth, right? And by analog, I mean probably something physical. Or maybe I'm simply meaning something not digital. One example is, look at this radio. Look at this sensational radio. I love my Bose digital radio in my kitchen that I listen to most nights when I'm making dinner for my wife and I. Look at this baby. This is a 1956 German Telefunken Operette 6 On vintageradio.com, I've only found one other radio like this in the world, and it was a present from the J.F. Powers family to me. This thing has tubes, man. It's huge. It's the size of a bread box. And now I realize that none of you know what bread boxes are, but in the olden days we had boxes and we put bread in them. We called them bread boxes. It's gigantic. It's got these glowing tubes in the back, and even though it's not stereo, it's the best sounding radio in my house, and it's a real comfort. It's missing a tube right now, but my physicist friend Dean Langley, Dr. Dean Langley at St. John's, is going to help me with that because he's got a laboratory full of tubes. Another example, another thing made out of tubes, is this beautiful guitar amp. Now I have a digital guitar amp called the Voxtronic, but this amp, my Fender tube amp that I've had for over 30 years, whoa, has this got a beautiful, warm, silky sound. Because it's analog, right? It doesn't have that harsh digital signal. I like my other amp because I can make probably 500 different sounds with it, with all the knobs and stuff. And this one's only got like reverb, but that's all I need in the evening when I'm playing my Gretsch Electromatic or my Telecaster. And I could go back and forth, right? Another example would be I love vinyl. I love my vinyl records. I love my record player. I loved them all my life. But records scratch, don't they? And that's why I'm also devoted to my digital music collection, which is, I'm working on my 4th terabyte. That is about 7 years worth of music if you played it continuously. And those files are perfect and they're backed up everywhere. So back and forth, back and forth. Similarly, I love walking into a library and picking up books and holding them and smelling them and turning the pages. And I also, when necessity dictates, I like to find my way around electronic databases. And I'm repeating something I think I said on the porch. It's the pandemic, and I'm not able to do my research project for the 2nd year in a row the way I've done it for a long time. Let me talk about that briefly, and let me just tell you what I told my students yesterday. Were this before life, or had the pandemic not come along, I would have by now given out a manila folder to every single student in the class. And that student would be instructed to write their name on it in big letters. And over the weeks ahead, and basically what they do is they start throwing stuff in that folder because they know that by the end of the semester, I want their research project 8 pages, not 9. A little more than 7, please. Try to crawl onto that 8th page. And not only do I want the paper tucked into that folder, I want all their sources. I want them to print up everything that they used, because we generally use journal articles that we've gotten from databases. And I want the sources to look well used, right? I want them annotated and beaten up and highlighted and colored and underlined. And yeah, sometimes those sources are like the little breadcrumbs that lead me to the plagiarism, but I don't flunk anybody over that. We fix the papers if I catch them in time, if I get them back in time. And then so in the end, and I kick it old school, or I have for years. I pick up a pen, Uniball, a Faber-Castell Uniball Micropoint, 5mm, and I fix all the errors, old school, and the kid gets a physical project back. And also, when we have made presentations in the years, every time when that, about that 2-week period comes in, when I turn over the teaching to the students and they lead things, everybody comes in, they grab 4 or 5 3x5 cards. Each student presents, and when that student is done presenting, every student is obligated to pick up a pen and write positive comments about what they appreciated about the paper, the project, or the presentation. Nothing negative. And I have them concentrate on little things too. It doesn't, and I tell them, be specific, please. It doesn't do one of your colleagues any good to just say, good job, I liked your topic. That's nothing. And I'm telling you, students walk out of there with that little pile of 3x5 cards, and it's like 26 little pats on the back. Students save them for years. They save them in their filing systems, or their piling systems if they have one of those like me. So the digital is on because of where we're at. That doesn't mean that I don't have things to tell you about libraries, about other kinds of sources, maps, interviews, documentaries, films. We'll maybe cover that on another day. So there's that. It's digital. this year. Before I talk a little bit about databases, I want to make some comments on sources. And this is where we have a little bit of a fight, maybe coming. And I'm speaking with some hesitation here because I'm going to offer you a kind of a constraint. And English teachers are famous constrainers, and I don't like to be one of those teachers. I don't like to be the English, and I never would be the English teacher who says, don't you ever start a sentence with a conjunction. That's illegal. Don't you ever end a sentence with a preposition. Well, that's ridiculous. You can do both, even if it is a little bit awkward. That's not the kind of man I am. I am going to tell you, though, that the quality of your paper definitely is going to depend upon the quality of your sources. You just can't use junk websites, you guys, okay? So, yeah, it's a constraint, but I got to tell you right now, I don't want to see askabout.com on your works cited page. I don't want to see gradesaver.com and you know what I'm talking about. Just kind of yes, they serve a purpose, but, and I'm not trying to turn you into scholars, but I'm also not going to let you just default to going out on the internet, getting a bunch of crappy sources, pages, with no name, right? No author. If the source doesn't have a name, it's not going to mean anything to me. I'm kind of obligated, according to POEM, P-O-E-M, the Professional Organization of English Majors, to suggest to you that a really good source is, peer-edited, peer-reviewed, and maybe sponsored by an institution like a college or a research thing. We don't have to go that far. But I do want to get you interested in the idea that I just said. A decent paper, you need more than decent sources. To write an 8-page paper, you're only going to need 7 or 8 articles. You're definitely not going to need 7 or 8 books. It's just not necessary. We don't have time to read 7 or 8 books. It's not a rule of thumb, but generally it's like 1 source per page, right? 2 or 3 sources, probably not enough. 15 sources for an 8-page paper? No. The real problem you'll come up with is you're going to fight to get 5, 6, 7, 8 sources, and you're going to find one great source. And it's going to do all the work for you. And then what you're going to do is your head will be in a wheel-spinning exercise trying to get the rest of them woven into your paper. Now, I told yesterday I said, hey, when I got to Central Lakes College after my long career at St. Ben's and St. John's Prep School, when I started working in a state college, the only thing that disappointed me was the food, because it was terrible in Brainerd. I'm like, well, are you kidding me? This is what I have to eat for the rest of my life? Don't worry, it's okay. Prairie Bay, a beautiful restaurant, came in, and we contract with them now, and the food is awesome. So that got fixed. And there's another thing. I'm like, are you kidding me? These are the only electronic databases available? I had come from St. John's land, or for your school land, where many of you are headed, where your resources for researching are truly going to be superb. But I've learned that, and I started learning right away, that 2-year schools in the system, in the MSCF, which is Riverland, same thing as Central Lakes College, the funds are spent on different things. So I'm going to say this, and I'm not putting the school down at all. I'm not complaining. It's kind of bare bones, though. Believe me, you'll be able to get by. Now, I'm sorry to report to you that my favorite thing, and I just peeked unless it's hidden somewhere, my favorite database is called Jstor. Jstor stands for Journal Storage. And I know this material is a little bit dry, but JStorage was started in the mid-90s, I believe, by a former president of Columbia, who was a teacher / professor who kind of became an entrepreneur. And he decided to create like the end-of-the-line database for everything, for the arts, sciences, medicine, social sciences, literature, history, and it's huge. And when I looked on the first day, one of the first days at Central Lakes College, I'm like, what? This isn't here? Our librarian at the time told me, they can get by without Jstor. And I'm like, no, they can't. And I launched a 2-year campaign to get Jstor for Central Lakes College. And guess who the dean was back then, who said yes to it? Kelly McCullough. who's the dean of Riverland. Now I realize I got to get Jstor for Riverland, and since I'm coming back next year with a vengeance as an adjunct to Riverland, as an assistant, I'm gonna talk Kelly into this. In fact, I'm gonna write him an email right after this. He'll hesitate a little bit, like he did before, but he'll cave because he knows it's important. Problem with Jstor? Holy cow, is it expensive? The full package, like all the pieces of it, runs like $20,000 per year per school, per institution. That's serious bank. That's a lot of money. But we need it, don't we, Riverland? And I'm going to work on getting that for you for next year. It won't be in time to help us now. So what you're going to use is EBSCO. And I should log on and do that. All right, I had to cut my little vid here and get oriented and try to... Yesterday I demoed these databases live for my students in Brainerd. And I think there's a way we can do it here if you're willing to give it a whirl. But first, a thing that I want to say. We want to get our hands on high quality sources. And again, you don't need that many to write a decent paper. 7, 8, 9, 10 are going to be plenty good for you. And you want to get stuff you can read. And it's got to have an author, right? And it's got to be from a high quality journal, hopefully, or a really good general interest magazine like New Yorker, Atlantic Monthly, Harper's, magazines like that. And here's the thing. I've already gone to my own databases and entered my favorite one, which we don't have at Riverland yet, although I'm going to get it there. I like Jstor, and it took me a year and a half to get Jstor in Brainerd. So I've got that, and that's what I use, and that's what I took my students to yesterday. I'm going to take you to something that's pretty darn good, and I just talked to the Riverland people. Anyway, it doesn't matter. Do this. Open up your laptop or have a computer and run this video if you can on another tab or another device, and let's take you into where you're going to need to go. I'm on the Riverland page right now. You can maybe see it in the reflection of my glasses. And where I'm at the home page. So do this. Or write it down as a list. I'm going to click on Student Services. Crap, wrong. I'm going to click on My Riverland. And then I'm going to click on Library. That's step number 2. So on the library page, the tech person at the library down there just told me that one of the things you can do is just jump right into searching the Riverland catalog. Let's get a little bit more specific than that. And let's put our cursor on the right side of the page on databases. And we're going to scroll down in databases and we're going to click on full text databases A to Z. And here are the modest resources available to most two-year colleges. And a pretty darn good one that is definitely going to get the job for you, is the first one listed here under EBSCO Academic Resources. So I'm going to click on that, and let's just see how it does. Now, I'm going to enter the word heroes, kind of a general term. And when I did this in Jstor, I got over 100,000 full-text articles. That's way more than you would need. So we got to talk about the idea of what I call poking. Now I'm going to enter heroes, and when you do a search, probably the most important thing to remember, if you look down on the bottom of your screen, you're going to see limit your results. I would click on full text. Put a little check mark, a little check on full text. Why? Because that will guarantee you that you'll get the entire article. And let's take this thing for a ride and see how it goes. I've got heroes entered, pretending I'm going on my heroes research project. And how did we do? Well, we've got 44,511 sources. Half as many as I found on Jstor. Still way more than we need. So let's see what the first article titles are. Critical Lens. To learn from the past, we must teach kids the unvarnished truth about American heroes. Reviving forgotten Jewish heroes. Projected heroes and self-perceived manipulators. Young climate heroes. COVID heroes. Right? And I think you'll notice in a hurry that just about every single title of an academic article has a colon in it. It's like a rule. Now, we're going to enter a different search term. Icelandic heroes. I did this the other day for fun. And I'm going to enter Icelandic heroes, and I got, how many, let's see how we do here. Oh, I forgot to, no, I did click full text. Uh-oh, only one source. Cultural memory and gender in Iceland from medieval to early modern times. Let me see if what I'm doing here is I'm poking. I'm trying to model poking. What if I just put Iceland heroes? 7. Amazing. I got about 600 when I entered Icelandic heroes into Jstor. We'll maybe try this another time, but anyway, at least you know where the databases are. And let me just get one more thought to you, and then I'll return to this. What you've got to do, this is the most important thing I'm going to tell you today after the safety talk. What's important is to poke at any database. You poke at it, and you see what it does in terms of poking at you back. We obviously can't just enter heroes and have thousands of sources. That's not, where are you? Nowhere. What you're going to do is enter terms or a combination of terms to create different things. Now, it didn't go so well live for me right now, doing this on a video, but here's what happened to me when I did this with my Jstor. I entered heroes, got 100,000 sources, way too many. Then I entered Icelandic heroes. Actually, I believe I had over 1,000 scholarly full-text articles that in Jstor gives you the way the article looked in the journal it appeared in. When I entered Icelandic heroes, pretty quickly, I discovered that there's a ton of people in Iceland who are trying to revive Norse mythology as a religion. Like they're following Woden and Odin and Loki and Thor, and they are they're trying to start a new religion based on an old one. There's like 4,000 people in Iceland that find ancient gods to be heroes. They call themselves heathens, and they call their religion heathenry. They even got priests and rituals and conferences that they go to. So, wow, there's that funnel that I was talking about the other day. Heroes is up here, then comes Icelandic heroes, and suddenly I'm learning about this religion called Astra's something, and out of nowhere, a real live topic is forming. I think that's fascinating. Well, then I went a little further down the funnel, and I found out that there's a ton of people in Iceland, including professors, that are very alarmed that here in the United States of America, we got a little problem going. We got a few problems going. One of them is white supremacy, right? I would call that an issue. And these Icelandic heathen priests are riled up because white supremacist groups are appropriating their metaphors. Apparently they're marching with, pictures of Thor and his hammer, because the hammer is some sort of symbol of like excessive pure whiteness. That's amazing. It's also fascinating, and it's also a potential paper topic. Any poking that you do could lead you to a topic. You just got to stick with it and not take the first thing that pops up in that room that you enter into. One more example. I entered heroes, and I entered comic heroes. And pretty quickly I found some scholars talking about the idea of black superheroes that are suddenly in DC and Marvel Comics. Well, I found one article written by a PhD who's very concerned that, yes, it looks like the creation of a black superhero would be about, equity and equality and given fair time to the idea of a black superhero. But that professor, for some reason, and I don't know anything about this, so I'm just kind of talking off the top of my head. I only read the first part of the article. The professor has concerns that people making comic books about black superheroes might be engaged in cliches, stereotypes, minstrelsy, tokenism, and might be doing actually harm instead of good to our culture and our society. So I feel like I'm talking too much, and I'm not exactly sure how close I am to the 30-minute mark because I got multiple clips going. We talked safety. You got a poem. We talked about the digital tension between the digital and the analog, and have at least given you kind of a haphazard guide to where the databases are that you're going to be living on until you get yourself a college degree. So stay safe, Riverland, and Long Prairie Gray Eagle. Be well. Love you guys.